I'm born and bred in Zululand, South Africa. I think one of the things that I find exciting about Nigeria is the drive and the innovation. And I was discussing this with people last night, and I said you can see it in football. I remember, and I'm sorry to remind you of the bad news, when the Nigerian Super Eagles failed to qualify for the African Cup of Nations. There was massive uproar here in Nigeria. When Bafana Bafana, the South African team, failed to qualify, we said, no problem, we'll just try and host it. So, thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you today. I'm just going to briefly touch on a few ICT strategies of how we see things developing here in Africa, as well as innovation. And as you can see on the screens, my story is how African ICT innovation and strategy starts with T. So if we could have the next slide. Why would I say African ICT innovation and strategy starts with T? It's a very obtuse thing or a very obtuse question to pose. And the reason I say that is because we have a lot of dynamism, we have a lot of talent, and we have a lot of ability here in Africa. What we need to do is to intertwine this and be able to harness it around us. And I want to tell you a brief story about a project that I worked on in Kenya, and it was to do with the tea industry. Now, some of you may not know that tea is Kenya's second biggest export foreign exchange earner after tourism. And there was a big issue in Kenya a few years ago with corruption and pilferage. And the Kenyan tea industry is mostly controlled by small-scale growers. And these growers would grow tea individually. They were individual Kenyans, farmers, looking after their families, their communities. And what would happen is that when they declared their yield, maybe it would be 500 kilograms, by the time that tea arrived at the coast to Mombasa for export, it would only be 250 kilograms. So we looked at an ICT-based solution, but one that harnessed technologies that are here in Africa, not connected cars or digital cities of the future, but technologies that are here and now. And feature phones, very basic phones that the farmers had, and we used USSD technology, all right, to upload credit onto your prepaid account. And we also used M-Pesa, the Kenyan monetary digital payment system. And what we did very, very simply and cheaply is we embedded a microchip into, or SIM card, into these scales. And what that did is we linked it up with the farmer, and we linked it up with the warehouse in Mombasa. So the farmer would come and put 500 kilograms on the scale. The machine would send a USSD, free of charge, to the farmer and say, Mr. Wangata, do you agree that you have 500 kilograms? He would say yes. Once he said yes, it would send a message to the warehouse in Mombasa. The warehouse in Mombasa thus expected 500 kilograms. And if 250 kilograms went missing, it would be somebody else's fault, not that farmer's fault. Also, simultaneously, 100 kilograms, 50% of his payment would be released immediately, and it would show up on M-Pesa. Now, this very simple system had a number of benefits. First of all, there was less pilferage. There was more confidence in the system. And there was a third economic benefit which we did not foresee. That because 50% of the money was released immediately, that farmer was able to put that money back into his community on that day. If he needed to buy seeds to replant his crop, he could. If he needed to buy educational books for his children, he could. If he needed to buy food, if he needed to buy implements, and it sped up the economy. So the Kenyan tea yield was increased by 3%, not because we grew more tea, but because we used an African innovation to solve an African problem. And it had the added benefit of speeding up that particular economy. So if I can see the next slide, please.
Next slide.
If I look at where we are in Africa, we're an exciting place, okay? We have talent, we have drive, we have innovation, right? And we have the desire to harness all of it. And if I look at the new era of digital and ICT that we're entering in, there are systems and applications. We need to look at services and solutions. And we also need to look at how we can digitize business and use ICT to grow the continent, to grow the economies, and to benefit the people.
Next slide.
But what the point is of what I would like to make in this discussion today is that digital business or ICT is not merely IT strategy. It is a combination, a symphony, okay? And in a symphony you cannot have merely drums. You have to have violins, you have to have triangles, cymbals. And with ICT, we cannot only have entrepreneurs or people or governments or regulators. We all have to act together. And if you look at this, ICT strategy and innovation is an inclusive thing. It is something which, if you look at my Kenyan tea example, it touched various parts of the community where the farmer would come up and say, I understand USSD because I know how to load money on my prepaid. The government came to us with an issue. There is corruption and leakage. The mobile operator said, we have this infrastructure in place to solve it. And in South Africa, we have a saying, which you may or may not have heard of. It is, do not eat the elephant all at once. We eat the elephant in small pieces. And this is like ICT strategy and innovation. We need to look at everything in society and then combine it. Next slide, please. So, if we look at the ideas and the electronic forms and uses of information and technology, it's bigger than the scope of any individual, of any entrepreneur, dare I say, of any mobile network operator, or even the government. It is all of us. We are looking at smart mobile devices, we are looking at social media, multimedia, structured data, unstructured data, big data, analytics, new and emerging operational technologies, and of course the Internet of Things. And what we have to do as Africans is look how we can combine all of this. Next slide, please. So, what I do to use this is look at what we call a digital opportunity matrix. We look at the digital context, we look at the digital opportunities, the digital threats. There are threats in digital, be it cybercrime. I know many of the ministers are looking at cybersecurity bills, but there are also capabilities of our people, of our youth, of our ideas. But there also exist digital gaps that we have to divide, have to conquer. And if we look at this from the outside in, from our societies, but also from the inside out as ICT leaders, we can then work to find those digital synergies. And those digital synergies are what we need to nurture to provide growth for the continent and for our people. If I look at that part, strategically, there are various aspects. Okay, there is policy control, if you look below in terms of the strategy. There is content, there is people. It's not just about all come together and work together. So ultimately, in terms of great African ICT strategic strategies and innovations, we need to look at the digital context. We need to look at our opportunities. We need to combat our threats. We need to harness our digital capabilities. We need to cross our digital gaps. And what we need to do is we need to look at strategy from a corporate level, from an entrepreneurial level, from a mobile network operator level. We need to look at the portfolio from government level. We've seen many state governments here from Nigeria today say how they are doing things in their state, which must be applauded. And if I may, the governor from Cross River. I believe in the Efik language, Calabar is Akwa Akpa. So I'll speak some Zulu later, but that was my Efik. No, same side, please. And ultimately, we must build not only business models, but societal models on how we can utilize innovation in ICT. Ultimately, I personally believe, and I hope you agree with me, here in Africa, we have the talent. And I see the youth in Europe and Asia, but we have such drive. There is a fire in the eyes of the African youth that they want to overcome the obstacles of history and rush towards a great new future. So we can harness this talent. We also have our information systems and our analytics. I believe the Honourable Minister from Ethiopia pointed out what growth has occurred in Ethiopia over the last few years, and everywhere. We also have the infrastructure and the services. There is a desire to do it. We must just know how to utilize it and include everybody. So, if I look at 6 golden rules of how to do this, it's one thing speaking about it, but how do we do it? We take Minister from Lesotho, Kgotsoletsatsi, spoke about the example in Kenya, where it was in the world. But what works in the world may not work here in Africa. And we have to take African contexts, and we have to take African problems, and we have to solve those African problems and take those contexts with African solutions. So yes, we must look at the threats and the opportunities and gaps we want to learn. And finally, we must integrate it in our people. Number 1, we must define the issue. Okay? We must know what it is. Number 2, we must direct it. We must agree with the governing bodies, with the stakeholders, how we can go. Number 3, we can discuss it in amongst ourselves. Forums like this share ideas of best practice from Mali to Chad, to Swaziland, to South Africa, and sometimes even Nigeria. And we must design our models, utilizing our ICT innovation and infrastructure. Then we must decide on what we need to do, and finally deploy it. We cannot do anything without action. So to conclude, next slide please. African innovation started with T in my talk today. But let me tell you, it ends with you. It ends with me, and it ends with you. Our great African statesman, and I'm very proud to say, my ex-president, Nelson Mandela, says, it always seems impossible until it's done. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, honourable ministers. We have the knowledge, we have the drive, and we have the people, and we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick, for a fantastic session. We now invite now Adrian Hall, COO of Extension, to come up on stage of the occasion. This is the 14th Innovation Africa Digital Summit, and Adrian Hall, our CEO of Extension, is going to lead the closing ceremony. He'll be joined by Amina Oyegwala, HR Corporate Head at MTN, also Yusuf Lazore, CEO of Galaxy Backbone, and I believe we're waiting for the Vice President to come up shortly. But Adrian, the floor is yours. A round of applause, please, to Adrian Hall, CEO of Extension. Thank you.
Excellencies, Honourable Ministers, State Governors, representatives of governments from across Africa, VIP guests, ladies and gentlemen, you have been most welcome at the 14th Annual IAD Summit. The IAD Summit is unique. I hope you've experienced the uniqueness over the last 3 days. When I say unique, you could call it a conference, you could call it a summit, But what it actually is a family. It's a family of very senior decision makers that invest their time year on year to reviewing the developments of ICT in Africa and to looking at what the next stage is. I want to share a few facts with you about this year's IAD Summit, which demonstrates just how valuable this summit is in the future of Africa's ICT growth. IAD 2016 has been attended by over 500 attendees for the past 3 days, which is a record number. Those 500 people have represented 45 countries, of which 35 of which are African nations. There's been over 250 individual organisations, and they've been represented by people from 20 African governments, agencies and ministries from outside of Nigeria, and they comprise of 20 state government institutions and national parastatals from Nigeria. There's been several. There have been over 170 of you as the C-level representatives of your companies. The rest of you are the department heads, the leaders, the implementers, the drivers of ICT. On behalf of the Extensia team and everyone here, I want to thank you for investing your time in the IAD Summit and to continue to invest your time. There have been people here that have been with the IAD Summit for the last 14 years. There are new members of the family, and I hope as new members of the family you'll continue to be with us in future years and continue to drive. A few more statistics. Speakers. We've had 6 workshops. We've had 36 individual sessions taking place over the last 3 days. And that's not even including the and the social function, active participation. And that's really the key with the IAD Summit. It's how you interact with each other, how you engage with each other. And all throughout the summit, interactions, workshops, and full engagement with the sessions have shown and demonstrated once again that as the IAD family, ICT in Africa. The energy and enthusiasm will drive growth and encourage you to keep. Of course, from Nigeria. Participation, it's a huge investment in your time to come to these summits. We worked very tirelessly to put this event together, and levels. And I'd like to offer you the opportunity. With us very closely in the whole development of the summit, Owicho Iboji, Franklin Ginger, Chidi Opala, and especially Rabbi Abu Bakr, who's tired of our phone calls and regular communications over this period. But thank you very much for being a very supportive team and helping to cover the opportunities for bringing this event to Nigeria and making sure it addressed the objectives. I'd also like to thank our inimitable conference chair, Dr. Madan Rao, who's travelled all the way from India to enthrall and entertain you as he ever does. But I'd also like to offer very special thanks to Dr. Bashir Gwandu, who supported us at the beginning of the event, where connectivity let us down, and Madam was slightly delayed in his arrival. So I don't see Bashir in here, but if you're here, please stand and take a bow. Thank you very much for your very active contribution there. I'd also like to thank a young lady called Yoram Tilahun, who's also travelled all the way from Ethiopia. In flawless events, our partners, and she's made sure everyone's experience has been a smooth one. You probably haven't seen her that much apart from dancing, but she's in the background and making sure everything's working well. So thank you very much for that. I'd also like to thank the team here who have put together for their seamless hosting. BCN, I'd like to thank for their coordination of transportation and entertainment and ushers and their support throughout the event as well. Thank you to you guys. A whole team from England called Extensia, and I'd like to thank specifically our CEO, Tariq Malik. Andy Pond, Katrina Hooker, and Pauline King, who's not here with us, that was instrumental in putting the programme together with us. So thank you very much to the Extension team. I hope you've enjoyed these last 3 days. I hope that you continue to be a member of the Extensia family and the IAD family. It's slightly dysfunctional if you were at the evening last night and watched our dancing, but we'll disregard that, and we invite you to be honorary members of our family. We look forward to seeing you at the future events this year, and for keeping in touch between now and then. We've had live streaming actually over the last 3 days. I'd like to thank the team that put that together for us. Also, we have a Flickr page where you can download photographs of yourselves behaving well, or behaving slightly not so well. So just check them before you download them. We will be sharing presentations with you after the summit, and of course we're available for your contact or communication or in any other way that we can help you over the following years. So thank you very much to everybody.
Thanks so much. Let me now invite Amina Oyebola, Head of HR at MTN Nigeria, to please come up on stage. A special thanks from all of us to MTN for the very generous sponsorship of this event. They've been with us for several years, and we all put our hands together to thank Amina. A round of applause, please, for HR.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, organizers of this wonderful summit, and distinguished members of the press, I'm indeed truly honored by another opportunity to make a few remarks as we round off 14th Innovation Africa Digital Summit. I indeed hope, and I'm sure you will all agree with me, that the last 3 days have indeed been very enlightening and extremely productive. If you do agree with me, please give the organizers a round of applause. I have personally gained additional insight into the opportunities and practical steps by which our beloved countries can build strong, vibrant digital economies for the benefit of our people on our wonderful continent, Africa. We have also gained clarity about the scope to be done, the scope of work to be done to create the appropriate operating environment, one that will stimulate the continued investment in material and human resources required to realize our digital objectives and dividends. Indeed, several important points emerged during the course of our deliberations, and permit me to summarize them under 3 headings: connectivity, capacity and creativity, and collaboration. There is a critical actively work together to improve access to digital technologies within and outside our borders. We must work to break access barriers and speed up the deployment of relevant infrastructure across the continent and ensure we include the underserved and rural communities. There must be connectivity for all, and we must connect the unconnected. Connectivity is therefore absolutely key. Capacity building and creativity. We are, as has been discussed in the last few days, in a knowledge world. Therefore, every single effort or step taken to build capacity for successful utilization and adoption will translate to giant strides for our continent and for our people. We must be the change we seek in Africa by wholeheartedly embracing and encouraging the use of digital technologies in key facets of our operations, in both the private sector and the public sector, and in civil society. Driving utilization through capacity building will involve a multiplicity of measures and a clear plan, which should include, of course, training and knowledge networks, creation of relevant content, providing incentives to drive adoption, as well as nurturing and encouraging interest in ICT across the different levels of education. We must adequately fund science and technology in our institutions and support innovation hubs. Collaboration, and this has already been touched on by several previous speakers. This is easily one of the most important takeaways for me from this summit. Collaboration and partnership is the only way forward. Together, we will stand. We simply must collaborate and integrate for greater effectiveness. As we pursue prescription and implementation of the right policies to enable growth, we must also work towards increased access and adoption, as well as the required investments for building our ICT infrastructure. Channeling resources towards bridging the digital divide and supporting innovative financing mechanisms and incentives for ICT development projects. It was instructive to note that the Nigerian legislature, represented by the chairman of the House Committee on ICT, made mention of the support through formulating enabling laws to further the growth of ICT here in Nigeria. I trust that the Honorable Minister of Communications, the Ministry of Communications itself, the industry bodies, our regulators, and other stakeholders in this regard. I would also like to encourage the specifically acknowledge and in Africa through ICT. I congratulate the organizers again, fellow partners and sponsors who have attended this summit, and I want to assure you that I'm going to become a very familiar face. I commend all participants for the fruitful deliberations over the last 3 days, and I especially thank all speakers and experts who participated in the panel discussions. Your willingness to openly and candidly share your experiences and insights is indeed very much appreciated. I also extend to the members of the media who have covered this very, very unique last few days. It is absolutely crucial that the insights and ideas generated here are disseminated to a wider audience and readership for the desired results. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we return to our respective organizations and institutions, let us be part of the solution to propel Africa forward. Let's remain mindful of the critical task before us and effectively leverage ICT in Africa as an engine of growth. More than ever before, the time is now. We all have our part to play to successfully implement Africa's digital agenda. And even though the ultimate speaker put him, so I'm going to say it again.
Use the opportunity naturally to express our gratitude for all and every felt, very fulfilled option to them. And it was nice, even up until the last few presentations. In the opening stage, almost everybody who spoke dialogue. So to a large extent, yes, I'm sure many of these events, we come, we meet, exchange cards, pick up a few pamphlets here. But really, what happens after? That's the main question. What's the next thing that we would do? The last but one presentation gave us some slides about some next steps, which, by the way, let me confess, I took a picture of, because it sought to do exactly what I am trying to struggle within myself to find a way to do. How to simplify the process of moving these things from just talk to action. And the action should be coordinated action. And maybe because I enjoyed this conference, I would like to say, okay, maybe we should have a conference to discuss looks apart. To, as a matter of fact, decide on what the next steps are, so that next year when we meet at the next IAD, we'll be talking about some of the successes we recorded as a result of this particular IAD. Then last, I'd like to once again say that for those of you who were able to make it to Abuja, we do hope, and especially those who have never been to Nigeria, I'm sure, I hope this opportunity to visit Abuja has changed your minds about Abuja. The Permanent Secretary at his vote of thanks in the opening invited you to try our suya. I hope everybody has been able to try one or two things of our cuisine. But I'd like to say, please, and I want to say thank you very much for the opportunity and the honor of.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, end of the 14th Innovation Africa Digital Summit. But this is not the time to say goodbyes, because at Extension, we never say goodbye. We just say, till we meet again at the next event. And we are so engaged now with events in Africa that we have not just this one annual Innovation Summit, but we now have 3 events a year. So if you want to engage more intensely with the technology and the networks of the region, please to come up with us. Maybe other events that you like to do. Many of us have heard ideas coming out in the past 3 days on, we need an event on digital education, maybe digital healthcare, something on Western ICTs. Please do share these kinds of ideas with us. We'd love to put them all together and come up with a good program and publications for you. I also liked what Amina said earlier about the results of the discussions over here need to be shared. We're writing up my usual annual conference, sharing it online. I could not attend every single session, so I can extract what I think have agreed to be shared on the websites. Not all speakers want the full presentation online, but some do. So very grateful to all the speakers for sharing their insights with the broader break for the farewell networking lunch. Rest of my Accenture team to have a last round of networking. If there's anyone who you haven't met yet and you want to meet, please get in touch with us at Accenture and we put you in touch with whoever it is that you have to meet before we leave. So I will say I will see you all at the next event. We will soon announce where the next and when the next IADS event will be. So please do stay in touch wherever that event will be, either here or some other parts of Africa. Have a very good trip to those of you who've come from overseas, and to all my friends in Nigeria. This is my first time in Nigeria, but it certainly will not be the last. Thank you all very much, and have a very good day.
studying now.